Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is Monday morning, November the 8th, 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And chat room is open, and the link is in there for the website that I want to continue looking at. And we left off on Friday talking about defining domestic abuse with Dave Decker, and on the website angerresources.com, www.angerresources, ANGERESOURCES.com. And it's a great website for people who might think, they might have some anger management problems, anger issues that are interrupting your life or causing you a lot of problems. I know I grew up like that. I grew up around a lot of angry people. I grew up with a lot of anger myself. I witnessed a lot of my friends actually having anger management problems that would sometimes get them in a lot of trouble. And just throughout my life, I've seen lots of people, having these anger issues. And even people at work, that I'd be working with would have anger issues. Even people would have more anger issues than me, you know what I mean, like more problems handling it even than I would think that I did. I was stuffing my anger for a long time, and just recently, the last, I don't know, however many years, 20 years or something, or 18 years, because I didn't want to hurt anybody, so I was stuffing my anger, which wasn't good either, because then when I would actually have to let it out and release that anger, the poor person who it would be released on actually got the whole brunt of my whole anger from, years prior. And so it wasn't healthy, it wasn't good at all, and it's really damaging. We have to learn how to handle these things. Anger is normal and it's natural, and just by reading through this website you can see that anger is a normal, natural thing that we need to learn how to deal with, because anger is it's a sign that something is wrong, obviously, or we wouldn't become angry. But we don't have to become abusive, and we don't have to stuff it either. We can learn how to be how to let people know what our needs are, what we're thinking, being assertive instead of being aggressive. So that's what I really like about this website. It kind of goes in to talk about, how we can do that without being abusive or whatever. These are really just learned behaviors that we need to learn how to manage, right? A lot of it, I think, is learned behaviors. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. But this website's great, so I hope you will go check it out, www.angerresources.com. Dave Decker and Michael Lobsatz put this together, and they're both therapists, and they both work in that field. And I just think it's great information. So I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I don't hold any certificates in that area. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows, because I just wanted to be another voice out there for people to say, hey, you're not alone. And I know too many survivors who have been on this road for a lot longer than I have, and they are a really huge resource for me as far as just saying, when they say, hey, you can do it, I believe them, because they are doing it, and I know their stories, and I know where they came from, and I know what they suffered, and I'm thinking, hey, they can do it, I can do it. It's great to have somebody to sort of help us along, and for years I didn't reach out, and I just recently started reaching out to people, and the response that I got from people was so awesome. I really attribute the response that I got from people to my healing journey, because the people that I've met, over the last year or so have been just so helpful and so just so good. They're just pulling me along, and they're there for me. And that's the thing. If I would have never reached out myself, then they wouldn't have known, and I would have continued to suffer on in this mess, right? So that's the whole issue. It's so important to reach out and get some help where you can, whether it's therapist, counselor, group support, online group support, whatever you need to do for yourself, calling a crisis line, whatever it is, right? It's so important to get help. You sure deserve it. And I know I did. I certainly didn't deserve to be treated the way that I was, and I certainly didn't deserve then to go on and self-sabotage my life and continue to spiral in this pit of darkness all the time. That wasn't my fault, and it certainly was put on me by somebody else, and that was my parents and my abuser. So my parents were my main abusers, and one of my brothers. So it's very important to get help where there's no shame in that. The shame lies with the abusers. That's where the shame lies. And so that's why I always just try to be encouraging to people, to say, look, it was not our fault, and we do deserve to have a good life, and we did not deserve that. So, it's just, we have to reach out, though, because a lot of times people don't know, that it's not like we wear a sign around our neck saying, hey, I was abused as a child and, I really need support. You know what I mean? We don't walk around like that. So it's like most people, if you don't reach out, they won't know that you're suffering, right? Because so many of us are so good at putting on a smile for the world, like I could always put on a smile for the world because I had to. As a child, had to put on a smile and go to school after spending the night, in horror, complete terror, and or maybe spending the afternoon the day before being beaten, and then have to go to school the next day with bruises and welts and whatnot, and miserable, because I knew that, this was my life and it was horrible. And I went to school the next day and I had to pull it together. I had to be a student at school, and I had to be, I had to show the world that, hey, I was fine, And so we get used to doing that, and I've been doing that my whole life, showing the world, hey, I'm great, no problem. I can smile with the best of them, And in the meantime, behind the scenes, was going on was this horrible situation where I was looking okay on the outside, but on the inside I was dying. I was literally, it was killing me, right? And so that, I think so many of us are in the same boat, so many people can do that, because we've been conditioned, we've been made to do that. So you get used to it after a while, and that's your life, right? And I think so many people may know what I'm talking about. And so it's very important, to it's not like we wear signs around our necks, like I'm saying, oh, I was abused, I need a hand, We really have to reach out and find that help where we can, and make these phone calls and talk to people and just reach out and get some help. You'd be surprised how many people out there are willing to be a friend and willing to be supportive, especially if you don't have anybody in your life, right, that is supportive and can validate the abuse. And so many times we don't have anybody in our life who will validate the abuse and try to heal with us or try to help us heal. So that's why I joined an online group support, because I didn't have anybody in my life who could really do that for me. My sweetheart's very, very much supportive, but he was not abused as a child, so he doesn't quite understand the whole thing, and he feels bad for me and everything. And he's just such a nice man. He's very supportive. But the thing is he couldn't help me in that area to validate the abuse, right? So I joined an online group support a long time ago, and it was within the last 2 years, and these people were so awesome. It was so great to have somebody to talk to who had been there, who knew where I was coming from, who knew what it would be like to be abused as a child and go through some of the similar things that I went through, and I went through some of the similar things that they did. And it was very much a healing experience, because I thought, oh my God, finally here's somebody who understands what it's like to be a child in that situation and to be living in that horror, and understand the consequences of it, right? And so these people were very much awesome and very much wanted to see me move forward in my healing journey, and I wanted to see them move forward. So I'm just saying, just reach out wherever you can, whatever is good for you that makes you feel comfortable, whether it's getting a counselor, therapist, whatever, get an online group support, calling a crisis line, whatever you have to do, just so that, you can get some help, right, and not suffer alone in silence. It's so sad. And so we're looking at this so you have to listen at your own discretion. That's what I want to say. My shows can trigger, because I'm talking about everything about abuse, right? Make sure you're listening and know that, you're listening at your own discretion, right? Because abuse topics can trigger people, especially survivors. And if you're not strong enough to listen to the show and you're just feeling like, the topic could bother you and you might end up having a bad day, and you don't want to hurt yourself, and you certainly don't want to hurt anybody else. And so, make sure that you're strong enough and in a safe enough place to listen, right? And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, mainly because it's all about protecting children for me. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we fight every day to protect children's rights. And you have the right to be protected. You have the right to be safe. And if you're in a chat room situation or you're listening to something online with a lot of adult content, you have the right to be protected. So you should know that you should have an adult listen to the show with you, someone you trust and someone who cares about you, hopefully, to help you to make the decision whether you should be listening, right? It's so important. So we'll get right into this topic here. This we were looking at Friday was defining domestic abuse. This was from Dave Decker from www.angerresources.com. And he was going through, we were talking about the whole emotional abuse, he says here, the first we went through the male entitlement, and he's not just talking to men, but in this article he is, but we can pretty much say that, women can be abusers too, and he even says that here as well. Women are abusers too, but he's, in this article, was talking to direct, kind of to men to say, look, men, this is what happens, and you need to change this behavior. But I think it works for women too, because my mom was also very abusive to my dad. My dad was very abusive to my mom, and my mom was my main abuser. So women can abuse, and it's not just men. But this article is kind of based on a male abusing a woman in the home, right? And they were talking about all the stuff sort of related to domestic abuse, making generalizations, telling disrespectful jokes, and having the expectation that you will make all the important decisions in the relationship, treating her like a servant. But it works for a woman too, like treating him as a servant, because I know I've seen people do it. Not just men are abusive, lots of women are abusive too. Controlling how household money is spent and handled. This is what somebody can do to, as far as abusing somebody, in a domestic violence situation, domestic abuse. Believing that you have to be the breadwinner and the moneymaker in the family. Making the decisions about who does what in terms of the household chores and parenting. Communicating to her or others that she is your property and that you own her and she belongs to you, or he belongs to you, right, if you're a woman in that situation. Being possessive and acting jealous. That can happen in a relationship. It happens in a lot of relationships. And it's really very damaging, right, because there's no trust, right? It's like acting like that person's your property and acting jealous when they talk to anyone. And, that's a real lack. That shows that the other person has a real low self-esteem is what it is. And they fear that, by you talking to somebody, you'll leave them, or you'll end up having a relationship with them and not, and you'll be, like unfaithful to your partner, right? And that's just somebody who has a lot of problems with their own insecurity issues. Like my dad was very much like that. Like he says here, example, making the assumption that she is always on the make and looking to get involved with someone else, brooding about or continually bringing up her real or imagined relationships with other men. And that could be like, could work for women too. Women can do this to guys too as well. And my dad was very much like that. He would treat my mom like, she was a whore or something. And my mom I know for sure my mom did not sleep around with people. My mom was not that type, and she was a good woman. She was abusive, but she was totally abused her whole life, and she was just lashing out, right? So that's why she did what she did. There's no excuse for it, that's for sure. But the thing is I saw the way he treated her, and I remember the names he called her, and I remember what he would tell her, and the things he would tell us, that none of us were his kids, and that we all belonged to the postman or the neighbor down the street or the guy at the store, that my mom was having affairs with all these people, and we were all their offspring, right? And my mom was having to listen to this all the time, and it's really ridiculous and horrible. And my dad was just a sick man, right? Very much sick, had lots of mental problems. And emotional abuse, that's where we kind of left off. Behavioral or nonverbal methods like sulking or withdrawing affection, sneering at her or him, acting disgusted or contemptuous, yelling and screaming at or around her or him, staring or glaring at her with the evil eye, like following her around the residence to continue an argument, these types of things, right? Monitoring what they do, like detective work, always monitoring the phone calls, taping phone calls, following them around to know where they're going. It's kind of like, if you don't trust the person, why are you in the relationship? I've never understood that. I know so many people who are in relationships that they did not trust their partner, their husband or wife, and they would be continually paranoid and be following them around and really worried that their partner. I'm like, why would you even be in a relationship if you can't trust your partner? Who can you trust? I refuse to get involved in a relationship like that where I don't trust the person. Absolutely not. It's like you have to. These people, you have to trust them. They have to trust you if you're going to have a healthy relationship, right? Attempting to control her movements or isolate her, that's a huge one in domestic violence, right? It's domestic abuse, right? It's horrible. Keeping people away from their family and friends, right? Keeping them isolated. Interrupting her at eating, right? Getting finish a discussion at mealtime. Forcing her to stay awake or to get up from sleep. Not letting her go to bed just to resolve an argument and this type of stuff. Or him, right? Coercing her into doing humiliating behavior, like making her kneel or bow in front of you. This is horrible stuff. Like I know because I grew up in this, right? And it's absolutely horrible what people will do to each other, And it's not right. And anybody who's experiencing this kind of stuff, make sure you get some help. It is huge abuse, and people don't quite often think it's abuse, but it really is. And it's anything, it's so damaging. Emotional abuse, you know what I mean? People don't think that emotional abuse is a big deal, but it's far worse than physical abuse. Except for physical abuse that would kill you or maim you for the rest of your life, cause you to be handicapped. That's huge. But the thing is like emotional abuse that just stays with you unless you get some real help with it. It's like the physical, the physical beatings and scars and stuff. You can kind of heal most of the time from that, and maybe not always. So I know people, like people who, shaken babies, syndrome babies, they never heal from their wounds, you know what I mean? And certain people, will just horrifically abuse their children. The children cannot heal from those wounds, and we know this. And other people, like in domestic violence situations, parents can hurt each other to the point where, physically that their lives are just ruined. But the thing is a lot of times abuse is just, a lot of bruises and a lot of, maybe some broken bones and, some damaged nerves and muscles and stuff like that. But it's the emotional stuff that really kills you because it's in your heart. It's it's going on inside your heart. That's where I'm at, you know what I mean? Like the physical abuse, I have a lot of pain, I live with physical pain, and not just from the abuse that I suffered, but also from car accidents. I've been in a few car accidents. So I have a lot of physical pain. And some of it was from the abuse that I suffered as a child, and it's not fun to live with that physical pain. But the whole issue is I can kind of handle that. It's this whole stuff that's going on in my heart, the emotional and psychological damage that was done to my heart. That's the stuff that really kills you, because it's that stuff inside that just eats away at you, and that's emotional, psychological abuse. And that's so hard on people. I can kind of get over the physical pain, or I can take a pain pill, but unless you fix what's going on in your heart, it can destroy you. I don't say it will, but I would say that it could, you know what I mean? Because I know, because I've been there. And it's horrible what people do to each other. Verbal abuse, like here's what they talk about verbal abuse, and I was a huge victim of verbal abuse. Using words to hurt, punish, intimidate, or control your partner when the two of you are alone or when you are around other people. And my parents were the two worst verbal abusers on the planet. Criticizing, discounting, ignoring her thoughts, feelings, opinions, and values, telling her things like that's a dumb idea or you're nuts to feel that way. Mocking her or mimicking what she has said, right? For example, in a sing-song voice like mocking, right? And lecturing her about what's right and wrong or about the way she should be. And twisting things, she says, to get her to feel confused, crazy, or off balance. My parents were so good at that, right? They would twist everything. And like it says here, trying to manipulate her with mind games, lies, and contradictions. My dad was the biggest... He's schizophrenic, right? He's a borderline schizophrenic. And he is the biggest manipulating twister of mind games and stuff that you can ever imagine. And he's 87. He's still living, and I try to avoid him at all costs because he is so toxic and he is so evil, you know what I mean? But he twists things and plays these mind games, and he has everybody believing that he's just this wonderful man. And he's just been so good to his family, and, he's just such a great guy. And it's just like, I know different, because I saw what he was. I lived in the home with him for a long time, man. He's not a good man. He's a horrible man. He raped his wife, and he beat on her, and he beat on all of us, and he was horrible. And he not only that, but he threatened to kill us, and he would walk around at night saying he could kill us because we're from the devil, and God would be happy if he killed us all, and this type of stuff. And he did attempt to kill us. So the whole issue is he's a crazy man, and he would twist everything and make my mom go crazy. Like, he actually made my mom go crazy. I think my mom was off a bit anyway, because she was abused as a child horrifically by her mother, horsewhipped and everything else. Like, she was treated horrifically by her mother. And my grandmother was abusing everybody in the home. It wasn't just my mom, right? But my mom was the oldest, and she tried to save her younger siblings, right? And these orphan kids that my grandma was abusing as well. So absolutely horrible. But anyway, my dad would make my mom feel crazy, but my mom was already feeling crazy because she was brought up in this hellhole. And then she married this man, and it became a hellhole number 2. And then, he was just so bad, manipulation and mind games and lies and contradictions. Asking her to do something and then denying later that you ever asked her to do it. This is what my parents would do. They would say, they would deny everything. You know, it's like, well, you said this and you said it. No, they would totally deny it. And of course I was there and I heard it and I'd be like, yes, you did say that. And they'd be like, no, we didn't. So this is the thing they were, and even my dad today is like that. He says stuff and then he says he didn't say it or he never did it. Like he will not admit to the abuse that he caused, the trouble and trauma that he caused the family. He wouldn't admit to that for nothing. You know, like, I mean, he almost drove me and my sister over a cliff one time because he was going to commit suicide with us, right? And because he was always trying to commit suicide. I mean, the guy was suicidal, and he denies that. That never happened in his mind. But me and my sister know different, and we, you know, like we went home and my sister told my mom that what had happened, and my mom was like, "You guys are not going in the car with him anymore for, you know, without me or with, you know, at all, right?" He was absolute crazy. This is what people can do to people, right? Making negatory, derogatory comments about activities that she or he likes, places that they go, interrupting them, interrogating them, continually questioning them about where they go, what they do, who they see, right? Becoming or being accusing toward, blaming her for things that go wrong, saying that she can't do anything right around the house, with finances, with the children, in the relationship, right? Accusing and blaming all the time. Everything that they do is wrong. That was my parents totally. They were very, very much always accusing and blaming each other, never taking a look at their own behavior and always just blaming each other for everything. Ranting and raving around them, around her, about her, the children, the government, welfare taxes, the welfare cheats, taxes, the next door neighbor, things like that. Ranting and raving, that's what my parents were, ranting and raving all the time. They actually taught us how to do that. And then my brothers were ranting and raving all the time. So, and they were high on drugs, and so the whole scene was extremely kind of dysfunctional, very much bizarre. You know, there was no normal conversation in our home because nobody sat around the kitchen table, because it would get too violent. So we never ate together. Like, we always ate in separate rooms. But if we did come together, it was usually out in the backyard. Like, if my bro was out in the backyard ranting and raving on drugs, well, I'd go out there and talk to him. Or I stayed away from my dad when he was ranting and raving because he was very abusive. And when my mom was ranting and raving, I'd get out of the house because my mom was my main abuser. So I knew if she was ranting and raving, I'd better go to save my ass. So that's the whole issue, right? People are so extremely bad that they think, you know, that they should be allowed to get away with this behavior, and it's perfectly fine, and everybody in the family should just have to deal with it. You know, I would actually later as an adult, when I knew my parents couldn't do absolutely anything to me and I could tell them, you know, where to go and leave and never come back and not ever talk to them again, I used to tell them what they did. I'd be like, you guys were horrible, and you ranting and raving and cursing, and, you know, and my mom would sit there and she'd be like, so, you know, she just did not care, right? I mean, just expecting that everybody should tolerate your abusive behavior, right? And see, I used to do this because I took this behavior on because of my parents. So then I was ranting and raving, right? And I still kind of do in a way, right? But I try to not be abusive about it. But the thing is, you know, they taught us how to do this, right? How to be a little off-centered, how to be ranting and raving all the time, and how to be kind of crazy, right? Because we grew up like this, right? So I had to really learn and work on how to not be like that, right? It's hard. It is hard, right? Because they taught me that. That's what I learned at from age 0 to you know, when I became an adult. You know what I mean? I learned how to do this stuff from them. Swearing, cussing at her or him, right? Calling them names, telling them, you know, to go to hell and all this, and goddamn you and stuff. That my parents were the worst for that, and my mom especially had the worst mouth on her I've ever heard on anybody. I have actually never heard anybody be able to match my mom. And people would think that that's not that damaging, but it is. It really is. You know, when your own parent is telling you to go to hell, and including beating on you and telling you to go to hell, and that you're just a whore, and you're just a slut, and you're just a worthless piece of shit, and beating on you, it's extremely damaging because they're not telling you like that. They're screaming at you. They're yelling at you. They're in your face. You know what I mean? And with this hatred and this anger and this rage. You know what I mean? And that's what my parents were. Like, that's exactly the picture of how they were towards each other and towards their kids, right? So my dad was always quite often doing that to my mom, and then my mom would be doing that to him, and then they would do that to the kids. My dad was mainly doing that to my brothers, and my mom would mainly do that to me. She didn't do that too much to my sister, a little bit. but mostly it was me. And using put downs and name calling, right? Calling them names, which I won't even mention them here because there's all these bad words, right? But the thing is, people. That's what my parents were, always putting each other down and name calling, and their kids, right? So it's so hard to grow up around that. They never had a good word for us. People might say, well, maybe they just got out of control. It's like, no, don't assume. I've had people actually, like a couple people actually tell me stuff like, well, maybe they just. It's like, no, you don't know. Unless you know and you know the full picture, then you wouldn't know. There was no good words in between. So it's not like, we never heard anything good come out of their mouths, right? We never woke up in the morning and had them ever say one time, oh, it's just so lovely, have a great day, enjoy your day, and, we'll see you after school. And, there was none of that, And so when all you hear is really bad stuff and see bad stuff, it really drags you down. And that's why one of my brothers killed himself, at the age of 33. He was trying to kill himself prior to that, but he finally made it at the age of 33. It was absolutely horrific, absolutely horrific. And, I really seriously hope that my story gets made into a movie one day. I really do. Something for after school type specials for kids and stuff. And I hope that it will be all based on the fact that kids need to get help. If they're experiencing this stuff in their lives and they're being abused in any way, that they would get help, right? Because as a teen, I had the option to get help. I had someone intervene on my behalf. They could have gotten me out of the home. But I stupidly, because I wanted my mom's love so bad, and did not want to be thrown away from the home because I knew my mom wanted me out of the house. So I stayed, because I wanted to fight to stay in the home because my mom didn't want me, right? And so, and she made it very clear that she didn't want me, right? I was not wanted and I was born out of rape. So when you're told that and you're beat on and you're cussed at and cursed at and kicked around and punched, and slapped around and treated like really bad, you're not wanted. Right? It's pretty clear. It's like, okay, I guess I'm not wanted. And she didn't tell the other kids that she didn't want them. She never told my brothers that she didn't want them in the house, but she would scream at me, I don't want you here. You're just causing me problems. You're just a worthless piece of shit. And this is what she would tell me, but nobody else in the family. So see, it's no wonder. I was really fighting to stay in the home because I was fighting because I thought, no way, I have all these siblings and she's not telling them that, and she's telling me that. So that's the psychological damage that's done there because I was fighting to stay in the home instead of fighting to get out, and I had the opportunity to get out, right? And so that's why I think kids, they need to know that this is so heavy duty, so incredibly serious, and that they need to get help, right? If they're experiencing any abuse, or if you are experiencing any abuse like this, make sure you do get some help. It's so important because this stuff is absolutely horrific. What it does to you later on in life when you start, when you take that in, and it's like drinking poison, is what it is. And when you hear this all the time and you're being treated like this is just the emotional abuse. We haven't even got to the other stuff yet. This is it's like drinking poison. That's what it does to your system. You know what I mean? And you just carry this around with you all the time, even though you don't believe it, because you know that you're none of those names that they call you, and you know that you're not stupid and lazy. And yet, it rips your heart apart, because these are the people that they're supposed to love you. These are the people in your life, like your husband, your wife, your parents, your siblings, that are supposed to be there to support you, and they're supposed to be there to love you and tell you nice things and good things, and can maybe occasionally be constructively criticizing, but not abusive. And so, this is the whole issue, man. These are the family that you count on to be there for you. So, it's very damaging when they are your abusers and they are the ones that are hurting you. You know what I mean? It's like your whole world is screwed, because that's your whole sense of safety and security and protection, and even the sense of knowing who you are. You know what I mean? It's like, I fit in with this family here because, it's like you almost lose your life, And so that's why I'm saying, do whatever you can to get some help. We have about a minute left, and we'll take another look at this tomorrow. And I'll be back on tonight, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio with Elizabeth Brawley, and then my own show after that. So, but I'll be back on tomorrow with we'll take another look at this on one child abuse survivor to another. So, reach out and get some help, whatever you have to do, because I know so many people who have been suffering in this for a long time. I've known a lot of people who were abused, right? I know a lot of survivors, and I know a lot of people who were abused in their lifetimes, right, from a long time ago growing up. And, I know so many people are abused, and so, make sure you get some help. Do whatever you have to do, right? Just reach out and get some help, but don't suffer in sadness and silence. And you deserve to have a good life. I just want everybody to know that. Sometimes we never hear that from anybody, right? We never hear that we were worth it, that we did count, we did matter, and that our lives are truly worth it, and they do matter, right? And so, that's why I just want people to know, you matter. You really do matter. You have to matter to yourself, though. It won't matter if you matter to me, but what really matters is if you matter to yourself, right? So that's the whole issue. I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to matter to myself in order to live, right? Because I was just dying, because I was just, I had a lot of self-loathing and a lot of self-hatred and a lot of hatred for my family and for my parents, right, for what they did. But I had to learn how to love myself and how to realize, hey, I did count, I did matter the whole time, and it was not my fault what happened, right? It was not my fault that happened to me. So, I had to learn how to see things a little differently, right? So, in order to see myself in a different light and really truly embrace who I am, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying, get some help, right? Don't suffer in sadness and silence, right? It's so sad. So have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.